Welcome to Masters of Self University podcast, your highest source of sacred truths and universal wisdom. Hello, beautiful souls. I'm Rachel Fiori, mystic, spiritual teacher, psychic healer, and founder of Masters of Self University. Join our journey of soul transformation as we deep dive into this latest episode.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Masters of Self University podcast. I'm your host, Ellie Lee.
And I'm your host, Danny Morley.
And welcome to this episode where we are tackling mental programs. I feel like we're all professionals when it comes to mental programs. And it's the thing that obviously blocks us from so much of our magic and who we really are. And so I know that you and I, we're always talking about the mental programs that are running through us. And so let's kick things off. What was it like, Danny, when you entered this program and you realized how much was running through your mind?
Before I started this particular program, I was aware of the mind.
Mm-hmm.
I was becoming aware of the mind, but I didn't. I wasn't. I was doing meditation and I was trying to observe my thoughts, but I hadn't quite got to the place that I'm at now, where I can literally observe a mental program, observe a thought, and then see what program that is coming from, and really be able to decipher it out and separate it. So before this program, it was just coming through with in just huge quantities and huge waves. There would be one thought that would just lead to another. And I struggled for a long time with anxiety. And I really feel like anxiety is a lot of mental programs. It's just like you're worrying about one thing, you're worrying about the other, the future. It's just causing these spirals. And the more and more you pay attention to the mental program that's coming through, it's another one comes and another one comes and another one comes. And then it leads to that feeling of anxiety, that loss of control, the spiraling. I struggled with that for quite a few years. Definitely earlier on in my life, where I didn't kind of realize I had problems with my mental health. It was like very suppressed anxiety. And when I would experience it, I didn't even know what it was. And so for me, the mental program side of it has always been a really big part of my journey and a part for me to really heal. And finally, now I'm at the place where when these mental programs arise, I have enough awareness not to get lost down them, not to go down the spiral of worry and dread and fear, and to just appreciate it for what it is. And it's just a mental program.
Right.
So that's that's my little intro of mental programs. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on the same boat with you. I think the majority of my life I have spent in my mind and thinking that that was truth. And so I really took identity in that, and I really thought that was me. So down to like, you're a loser, I'd be like, yeah, you're right, I am. Like, like that's true. And it really wasn't until I read Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle, and where I was like, oh, that's not me. And what is the ego? And truly, what is my mind? And how do I start deciphering? And it wasn't until I started to really understand what it means to be the observer, where like now, you know, I graduate next week. Yes. And I observe my mind a lot. And when something pops up that's like really heavy or like really deep, I do this thing where I go program, like a little twitch. I'm like program. And you know, now we have the tools to know how to overcome it. But man, the mind wants to reign. The mind wants to be the ruler so bad. The ego wants to be in the driver's seat. And if there's anything that I know is that because the ego has been in the driver's seat, I've suffered for so long. And now to understand, yeah, we don't need to suffer because we don't need to give truth and validation to these thoughts that are totally not ours. And not to mention, like, you know, these programs, yes, we've created a lot of it, but we've also been handed down so many programs from our parents, you know, from our grandparents, ancestrally, all that stuff. And I think the era that I'm moving through right now is, what are the programs that have been handed down to me from my mother and my father? And really dissecting that and understanding that and knowing like, oh my God, like I just openly absorbed all of it, like all of it. So it's just like the layers of the mental programs that we have to sift through and we have to really alchemize and transform is so intense. I think that's why this generation and like what we're moving through and the souls that are here right now to really break generational traumas, it's so intense because you realize it's not just ours. It's so much of it that's been, you know, just absorbed into us. And so I'm understanding this journey deeper and deeper, the deeper I go into myself and really knowing like, wow, there's so much for me to alchemize for just my whole lineage. And that's intense. And then you realize, well, we were chosen for this, or like our soul chose this because we were strong enough. And then you realize like, oh, the power within is even more insane than I ever thought. And so watching everybody and watching you and watching myself throughout this journey has been wild because I see the strength in all of us. I see truly the warriors and the soldiers we are for us to really choose this journey and for us to really understand what we're here to do. It's an honor, but it's also the most difficult thing in the entire world. But also that's what we came here to do.
Beautiful share. The thing that came up for that as you were talking is you mentioned the skill, and it goes back to what I was saying about not getting lost in these programs. And before, when we were in this place before MSU, I think you and I were both kind of there. We were getting into spirituality, getting into meditation, and we're becoming observers of our thoughts.
Right.
But at that stage in the game, it was like, okay, I'm observing this thought. Now what do I do?
Right.
What do I do now? I see it, but it's still causing me suffering.
Yes.
It's still leading to some kind of pain. So like, what do we do with this? And the work we do at MSU is we go into the heart. And so from that place, we are able to remove the judgment, to remove the energy that is attached to the program, because we're not trapped in mind.
Right.
We're dropping down and we're in heart. And which grounds us, it calms us, it relaxes us. And our consciousness, instead of it being mental, is coming down in, and we're trying to connect back to like who we are, which is really love.
Right. And also the work that we've been taught too is, for so long, I think the conversation around healing has just been, well, sit in it. But it's never been like, observe the mental programs, understand where they're rooted from, because the mental programs lead to the emotional, which lead to the behavioral, which then leads to the core wound, right? But that's exactly how I was observing, but then I'm like, now what? Now what do I do? Because I'm understanding that they're there. I'm being very aware of them. But then it's until you go, okay, let's break this down, really break this down. And then you get to the root, and then you drop into your heart, and then you realize, oh, this is what true alchemy is. And that's why this program is so 360 or 180. I don't know what the number is, but it's the trigger. You go down to, what is your mind saying? What is it bringing up emotionally? How are you behaving? Then what's the age? And then it's like, okay, now I have the steps to really understand how to transform this. And yes, are the mental programs still there? Of course. But are they as loud as they used to be? Absolutely not.
Yeah. Instead of them screaming and taking control of your life, as if like you've got the ego in the driver's seat and all these programs are running through this ego and that's how you're living your life. Instead, we stop and we replace the ego with our heart-centeredness, which is connected to the oneness. And then from that place, we don't have to get lost. There's no losing yourself in your heart. There's only finding yourself.
Yes. And so many people don't even know that the ego is driving their lives. And I think the most beautiful thing about all of this is that understanding that you are heart, you are love. That's your true essence. And then everything else. And I know that the ego wants to survive and it's trying to protect you and all of these things. Like sometimes I go on these like spirals of like, I hate the ego and like, ego, you ruined my life. And then it gets to this place of like, no, it's necessary because it brings you back home and it brings you back to yourself. And so I think I'm learning to love the ego because of how much it's reintroducing me to my truest self. And the power of the heart. I mean, like, you can't understand the love that you are until you really, really go within. And it really makes you fall in love with yourself because you realize all the lies that you've been told from your mind. So many lies, so many things that are not true. So many things that are not true.
One of
Yeah.
one of my real big ones that a lie that was just being told over and over again. And it's really wild to just in this moment right now think back to this time of my life, but it was in the depths of my depression. I'd come back from my gap year. I think I've mentioned this before in all over Asia. But while I was in Asia, I partied way too hard at the full moon party in Thailand. And it was a really traumatic experience in the end. It was what led that night to like a fragment of my soul leaving, which I've managed to retrieve from this work. But because of how I felt, it created this program of I've fucked myself up so much that I will never heal. And it was like in my head, I was like, the chemicals in my brain I thought my brain was broken. Legit.
Wow.
The mental program was like, I'm beyond healing. And even when I went to, like, last year, I went to Peru and went to do ayahuasca and work with the shamans. I was so worried that what they were going to tell me is like, you're beyond, you're right. You're beyond it. You can't. And even though I'd done a lot of work around healing that belief and this core mental program of like, I broke myself, I fucked myself up, I partied too hard, I went, and now everything's like, there's something wrong with my brain now. But it was just a belief. It was just a mental program that I picked up and I created from the woundedness, from the pain that I was in. And I believed it. And obviously our perception and what we believe creates our reality. So our mental programs, literally, depending on what they are, will really create the life that we're living. Have you got any big programs that you've managed to get and heal like that?
Yes. One of my core wounds is unworthiness. And, I spent the majority of my career chasing Hollywood and really like thinking that that was it. And the mental programs that played during that, during the 13 years that I was going for this was always comparing myself to everybody, always like this narrative of like, you're just not good enough. You're not funny enough. You're not talented enough. You're not pretty enough. You're just not that great. And I took a lot of truth in that. Because what I would compare that to, am I booking enough? Like, am I getting the gig? And because I wasn't booking as much as I wanted to, those mental programs became my truth, which was you just don't have it. You're just not there. But then there's this other part of me that's like, I just keep going for it. I keep going for it because I realized I was trying to find my worth from this industry. I was trying to find my worth in doing these jobs and doing these gigs. And now, in my awakening and as I come home to myself, I realize, oh my God, Ellie, like your worth doesn't come from any of that. Like your worth doesn't come from any booking or an industry patting you on the back or telling you that you're really good. And even down to like the comparisons, right? Because I think too, I don't know if you can relate to this. There are times in the spiritual journey where or the healing journey, I'll look around and be like, wow, they're healing more than me. Or like, and then the mental programs again of like, you're just not that good enough. And like, you won't heal as fast as they will, or you won't transform as fast as they will. And it's this moment of like, we're not doing that because I know my worth now. And it doesn't come from anything outside of me. It comes from within. And that has profoundly changed me because you realize like the money, the career, the validation, the love from others, like nothing compares to when you start tapping into the true essence of who you are, the beingness of who you are. And understanding that you are love, you are all. And I'm having this moment in my life where every time I drop into my heart, I feel like what beams out of my heart is literally the connection to everything that is alive in this world. So to my dog, to the tree, to the leaf, to the plant. And I realize I am one. And if I am one, that means I am love. And if I am love, I am creator. And then what else can compare to that? And then it's this moment of mental programs you can't fight against that. They become so tiny, so small, because you realize, man, those energies, they just can't hold a candle to who you really are. And I really envision, I'm like very imaginary, and I really envision my light obliterating, like literally destroying these lower frequencies of unworthiness, of you're not good enough and you're not worthy. It's like, baby, I've passed that level. I know my worth.
Wow.
That's really beautiful.
It's so funny to hear you say that, because I mean, in the words of Jack Black, you got it. I don't even know what it is, but you got it. If anyone knows that film, drop me a message, see if you can get it right. One of my faves. That's so wild though, because I think anyone listening to this can clearly see that you have it. And but those programs, when you take them in and you internalize them as your own, and you download, it's literally as simple as like the same way that you go on a computer and you're like, okay, I'm going to download this program, and I want you to run this program every day that I turn on my laptop. Boom. Oof. And then the software's downloaded, and then every time you turn on your laptop, the program comes up and starts doing its thing. And until you have the awareness to notice that it's running in your computer, you're the computer of yourself, that you can go in and go, actually, this isn't actually serving me. Right. This isn't giving me what this isn't even true.
It's giving me a virus.
Yeah, you know I mean? A mind virus.
Yes.
So let me go in and just let me love this program. Yes. And let's heal it. Let's get rid of it.
Yes.
Because I don't think I need it there anymore. And then what gets replaced is a program of love, as you said. Yes. You know, a program of power, a program of light.
Yes. And can I tell you, when you were just saying that, what came up inside of me was this program that plays, right? The more, okay, this is what I was saying. What happens is when you don't know that you are love and that you don't know you can alchemize it, self-hatred comes out of it. Because when the programs are running and it says things like, you're a loser or you're never going to make it. And then we go, oh my God, you're right. That takes away from the love that you are, right? And it makes you hate yourself, and then it makes you abandon yourself, and then we cycle and we loop and we stay in this pattern. But the knowing that I can love this, it's the acceptance, right? That these things are here. Let me love them. Let me go in and like let them know, like, I get it. You're here. Come here. Let me give you a hug. And that is coming back to love. And I never knew that until I started this work, where I was like, oh, I should love these parts of me because I've hated them for so long.
Yeah.
And that's what creates so much struggle.
I spent a while looking into like self-love, and we always end up talking about self-love on this podcast because it's really the foundation for everything that we do in our lives. I mean, you can do something with, you know, with pain and with fear, or you can do something with love. And I know which one I would want to choose. Right. And it's exactly that. It's like, I thought self-love was this one thing, but actually it's about seeing these parts of you that you might not particularly like, you might hate about yourself. And then let me go in and just love that.
Yes.
Let me just bring some light to it and accept it, and let it know it's okay for being there. And that's how we really start to evolve and elevate and transform our lives. It's not from a place of resisting whatever it is that's coming up. Is seeing what the program is, and then truly loving it.
Truly loving it. And something that I was going through really heavy in the last few weeks is programs of lack and scarcity. And being someone that's been a freelancer and an artist for so long, like I never knew when my next paycheck was going to come. Like I was never like the one that, I mean, I was a dog walker and things like that. Like I did things to like make money when I wasn't booking. But when I was really going into the scarcity and lack, I realized a lot of it was mine, but a lot of it were these programs that I inherited from my father and my mother. And shout out to them. Like, you know, our parents' generation went through things that like we can never fathom and understand. But for me, I watched my dad as a small business owner constantly being in this fear that like sometimes we were making money and sometimes we weren't. Sometimes it was there, sometimes it wasn't. And I would watch him, and me being a highly sensitive person and an empath, I would just absorb it. I remember saying as a kid, I wish I could take this pain away from them. I wish that I could do something about this. And so then I let all of that scarcity and lack become me. And then my mother being a housewife and just raising kids, I know that there was a part of her that like wanted to provide and wanted to bring home the vegan bacon. I'm a vegan, but I just want to say vegan bacon. Wanted to bring home the bacon and wanted to be in her power in that sense. But because she was raising 3 kids, I also absorb all these programs of like, I'm not good enough because I don't bring home money. And I don't provide in the way that like society tells me to provide. And it wasn't until I started going into this wound where I was like, well, we got to knock all these programs off, because this really keeps me in this state of such scarcity, of this fear of money, of this fear that I'm going to be out on the streets, or like it's not going to be here and I'm not going to be able to provide for myself. And I think as adults, one thing that we really want to make sure is that we're providing for ourselves, that we don't need to rely on other people. And then it was this fear of like, do I have to rely on other people? Like, what if it all runs out? And then going into that and realizing all of these mental programs are governing me, which is the reason why I can't get to abundance, because these are just blocks. They're all blocks. And the moment I started like alchemizing these blocks and really getting like really dissolving them and really transforming them into abundance, was when I was like, oh, it's always been here. I just blocked myself from the abundance that I am, because we are abundance. And then I'm like, I get it. Now these things of like worrying about money, they don't hold anything, because I'm like, what is that? It's so small compared to who the beingness of me.
Yeah. Would you go in a little deeper? That was lovely. Were you going a little deeper into let's break this down? You gave this awesome example about lack and this thing that these energies you observed from as a child. Sorry, that you like took in, absorbed. What in this last week, what exact mental program, what was your mind exactly telling you?
Beautiful.
Like, what was the exact code? Because everything that we tell ourselves, remind me, because I'll give you an example after of something that I saw in myself. But these mental programs have the code of exactly the energy that we need to go in and heal. It's just we have to figure out exactly what the code is, right?
Yes. So something that came up during a coaching with one of the coaches was, I said, people like me don't make money. And when we got into that, it got down to like watching, my parents are Asian immigrants. I'm Korean and they're Korean immigrants. And I've seen the struggle a lot. And growing up in this society, Asian people, we feel like they call us like the silent minority, because we don't really have an identity. People really just shove us to the side. Like, we're the smartest, we're fine. We don't need to be speaking out and all these things. And so growing up, I started having this program of people like me, like my people that look like me. We don't make money because nobody really cares about us. So we have no value. And then watching my parents struggle was another program of immigrants never make it. We never have enough. And so
would you hear that in your mind?
Oh,
would you hear
yes.
immigrants never make it?
Yes.
So for anyone listening, that is the mental program.
Yes.
This is how we break it down.
Yes. And then going into the layers of that. And that's when it was revealed to me, like, oh, these are my parents' programs. Right. And so, and because I've made money, and I know when I'm in flow, it comes to me. But then the programs come in, and then they mess up that frequency of the abundance that I am. And so when I started really going into it, the way that I alchemized was truly tapping into like calling in abundance, understanding like that is me, and I don't need to be so far away from it. And then dissolving these stories that my mind has just clung onto for so long.
Lovely. Yeah. Because they really are their stories, that the mind is exactly it. It does cling on. These stories, they start with like a wound and a program, and then we have a whole story about it. I had this, to go back to the wound I was talking about earlier, and the mental program of like, I've fucked my brain up beyond measure. That I had this whole story about what happened and what was going on inside, and it was all just a story.
Right.
It was just a story. It was a side effect of my depression and my anxiety. And like, yes, when you look at depression, you can notice, like, I haven't done this personally, but I can assume all the content that I've read, all the books that I've studied on depression, that the brain does get like the levels of serotonin and dopamine and the happy chemicals, and like it does get out of balance. But the way to regain that balance that I found is not by artificially giving some external thing, is to actually connect to your heart, because your heart actually can then so you've got your electromagnetic frequency of the heart and the electric energy of the brain. The heart then gives the signal to the brain on what exactly it should, like what levels it should all be at. So if you're connected to your heart, naturally it will synchronize the brain, and over time, not necessarily immediately, but it will start to change the level, like at the way your brain's firing, which is why you can go down the route of pharmaceuticals. Like that is an option. It's not something I would particularly recommend for anyone with anxiety, depression, but that's a choice for you and your doctor if you're seeing someone. But just know that you can get the same effects just by dropping in, connecting to your heart, and allowing your heart to start to modulate the way your brain works. The example that I wanted to give was I was cooking on the stove, and I forgot to turn the stove off after my meal, and I left the stove just slightly running on low while I was eating, and I came back to clean up, and I saw it, and all of a sudden in my head I heard the voice, "Danny, how many times have I told you?" And I was scolding myself.
Wow.
And I was like, that's my dad. That was it was the exact same way you would say it, but I was doing it to myself.
Wow.
And it took me back because it was like, whoa, I just said that it was a program in my mind.
Wow.
How many times have I told you? And it's that, like, no, you shouldn't, you're doing it wrong, kind of thing.
Wow.
So I had to really stop and drop in and like investigate where it came from and start the process. But that's an example of how we so easily can just adopt these programs, especially from our parents. I love that you use your parent example because and we're not trying to shame or judge our parents. It's just the way that as a child you look up to parents for role model behavior, and you're absorbing everything that they do. And unless they're Jesus, unless they're fully enlightened, they're gonna give you some programs that aren't going to serve you. It's just a byproduct of being human. It's then our responsibility to, when we become aware, when we finally become aware that we're doing this, that we go in and start to take responsibility for our own healing, just like you and I are talking about here. So I'm going to challenge the listeners right now. Just spend a few days, maybe a week, maybe just one day, whatever you want to do. Just try and become aware of the mental programs that you've got going. Try and see what's coming through your mind, and try and just become a little bit more aware. And if you do become aware of something and you're like, oh, that's interesting, why am I thinking that? Where did that come from? Just get curious.
I really wanted to jump on, you brought antidepressants into the conversation. And this is something that I really want to be open and vulnerable about in my journey, because I feel like a lot of people can probably relate to this. But I've had depression and anxiety since I was a kid. Like I remember being like 3, 4, 5 and just being in this state of complete sadness and like not understanding anything and freaking out all the time. And so since I was 16, I started getting these insane anxiety blackout attacks where I would go into panic, I would get anxiety, and then I would black out. And people would find me in places. Like one time it happened to me, like when I was walking on the sidewalk, and I woke up and I was on the floor. And like it would happen to me in the car, like all of these things. And so in that time, what did they know? They just put pills in me. And so I've been on antidepressants since I was 16. And not to give my age away, but I'm 35 now, which means I've been on this for almost, I can't do math, but almost like what, 16 years?
Yes.
Is that? Yeah, something like that. And And
well, a little more than 16. 19.
Okay, great. Beautiful. Awesome. Okay, 19 years I've been on antidepressants. And as I was going through my spiritual awakening, I was having a lot of dark nights of the soul. I was having a lot of ego deaths, and I didn't know what was going on with me. Like during this journey, there's no handbook for this. So nobody's telling you, you'll experience this, and then this will happen, and that will happen, and this is how you get over it. So I was having these ego deaths, and I was losing myself, and I was purging, and I was being rebirthed. And what happens when the mental programs are triggered, it triggers your emotional programs. And for me, I'm you and I are very yin and yang, because you are from the mind, but I feel everything. So like your mind is running, but my body is running all the time. And so all this fear, this sadness, the depression, all of these things that I've carried all of my life would come up. And because I was so insane in this death, I would call my parents and I would cry and I'd be like, oh my God, I don't know what's going on with me. And then their programs of, well, you need to be on more pills, like you need to be on more medication, started like reaffirming itself in my head, where I found myself in my journey being like, I need to be on more of a dosage, because if I'm not on a dosage, then I'm not going to be okay. And so I found myself, because of their programming onto me again, upping my dosage. And so it wasn't until recently where they were seeing me go through another ego death again, where they were like, well, what milligram are you on? And it was the first time where I go, hold up, what's going on here? Because why do you keep asking about milligrams? And then I realized, oh my God, I've been running on their programs. And my mom said to me, and I love her, and again, we're never shaming our parents. Like, our parents are our greatest teachers. They are here to teach us, like, nothing is right or wrong. They did the best that they could. But she said to me, you need to be on more milligrams because you have to be happy, Ellie. Like, you shouldn't be sad. And it was this moment of like, hold on. You've programmed into me that the only way that I can be happy is if I'm hopped up on this thing that makes me numb. It gives me no access to myself at all. It doesn't make me see all the colors of me. And it's this denial of the acceptance of the darkness within me. And I said to her, I was like, I don't need pills to be happy. I'm here to experience the sadness. I'm here to experience all of it. And I'm not going to numb myself anymore. And I had to go in and really dissolve these programs that have been so infiltrated into me so deeply. And I know that it's their love for me, but it's not love. It's just for me to keep being in this suppression, keep being in this place of never accessing myself fully. And I can proudly say that I'm on the lowest dosage I've ever been on. I am on the journey of weaning myself off of this. I'm working with my psychiatrist to really get myself completely off of this, because there's this intuitive feeling too that I know that it blocks me from my true self. And so it's been quite the journey, but I'm finding so much power within it. And I know now that I need none of that. And that I'm here to embrace and love all of these aspects and all of these emotions that live within me, knowing that the power to really heal from it is within me and not from a pill.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Great share.
Thank you.
It was really wonderful to hear you, open up about all that. And it's so true. And for anyone listening, it's been an honor watching Ellie move through this and lower her dosage and seeing more come up. And we believe massive, well, it's more than a belief, it's a knowing that the pain is there to teach us something. It's the pain is here to show us where we need to give love, where we need to elevate. And depression often is, it's a calling to go deep within yourself.
Right.
It's a journey of going inwards. Right. And figuring out which parts of you have got lost and which parts of you need love. And so if there is anyone out there that is listening to this that is currently on any kind of anti-anxiety, antidepressant medication, I would say the more that you're able to reduce, don't ever stop taking that medication just immediately, because it's really important to keep taking it for your nervous system, because it can be very dangerous for your health.
Yes.
But as if you wanted to start weaning off it, what will happen is whatever you've been suppressing down, whatever depression or anxiety has been suppressed is going to start to come up, which often from people that I've spoke to, because I have got a little story with trying out antidepressants and anti-anxiety. And it's the same thing where I started taking them and then I realized I was feeling better, but then I was like, well, this is artificial, because it's numbing me out from the pain I'm supposed to be feeling right now.
Right.
Ended up a move of power, or could have been pure stupidity, but I believe it was the right thing. I took them all and flushed them down the toilet.
Wow.
Said, if I am going to heal from this depression, I am going to do it without pharmaceuticals. And it was the best decision I ever made. But I was just starting my to take them. So I was in a place where I could do that.
Yeah, of course.
Tried it a few times and I felt the effect it was having on my body. So I'd never recommend anyone doing that. But if you start to slowly decrease your dose over time, talk to your doctor about this, you'll notice your pain will start to come up. And often people then will think, oh, well, it's coming up, so I need more.
Exactly.
It's coming up for a reason.
Yes.
It's coming up to be loved. It's coming up to be healed. It's coming up to guide you deeper into yourself. The pain is there to elevate consciousness.
Yes.
You never think about your big toe until you stub it on the floor.
Yes.
Why? Because it's painful, and now your consciousness is thinking about that. So when pain inside, when we feel the emotional and the mental pain from all the programs that are running and the wounds that we have to take the time to stop, go into our hearts and figure out, what is the message? What is this pain trying to teach us right now?
Yes. Beautiful. And to everyone at home, like, everyone's different, right? We were never recommending that you guys like get off your pills. Like, you need to do everything professionally and intuitively, right? Whatever's right for you. But for me, I realized it was such a form of bypassing. It was such a form of just mask it. It's this whole thing of just mask it. Like, don't feel any of it. And that's why so many of us are walking around like zombies, like I had a friend tell me recently, she's like, yeah, 2 of my girlfriends are on antidepressants and they said they stopped crying. And that just broke me. Because I'm like, this is what it does to us. It completely separates us from who we really are, from really going within and going into it. And it wasn't until that really, really, really went into me that I was like, I am ready to completely overcome this, because I'm not here to mask anymore. I've masked my whole life. I've been on antidepressants my whole life. And guess what? Did it bring me happiness? No, it did not, And now, as I'm weaning off of it and I'm learning to love myself and alchemize all these, for the first time, I understand what joy really is. For the first time, I understand because I think all our lives we hear, you need to be happy, but you don't really understand what it is until you really experience happiness within, knowing that you are happiness. And so I think a part of my journey is to really talk against pharmaceuticals, because of how much it's governed my life and the programs it's instilled in me. But for everybody out there, like, you can overcome, but do it professionally.
Yes.
And do it knowing that it's right for you. For a lot of people, it does work. And we're not bashing it. We're just saying, like, don't use it as something to numb, because the numbing keeps you from you, and you're here to come home.
It's a temporary solution.
Right.
To escaping your pain.
Right.
But the pain is always going to be there until you're ready to go into it.
Exactly.
And sometimes it's really important to use a tool like that during a time of crisis.
Yes.
Because if you aren't ready to go into your pain, if you aren't ready because you don't have the skills or the right teacher, it can be extremely traumatic.
Right.
Coming off a medication like that. But if you do have the right teacher, and you do have, it will be the best thing you'll ever do, because then you won't have to rely on anything, and you'll be able to experience the fullness of life. The beauty of the polarity that exists within this universe is that the only way to truly experience love and enlightenment is to go deep and into the darkness and the pain.
Yes.
And that's the way the cookie crumbles.
Yes.
You can't elevate, you can't ascend to these higher states of consciousness without having to go through all of the shit, all of the muck. I mean, that's why the analogy of the lotus flower, it's often used to symbol a spiritual awakening or a depression, because it rises up through the muck, and then at the top, once it's worked its way through all the dark, it blossoms in the light and it turns into this beautiful flower.
Yes. Beautiful. Oh, beautiful analogy. And lastly, I'll say this. I think that my journey has been so intense because I have repressed for 19 years. I haven't felt the depth of what I've just swept under the rug, but it's forced me straight into my power. And I think you can probably relate to this, but every day, it's like we're coming home to the power within, and I've never felt stronger, and I've on my lowest dose. So what does that say to everybody? You can do this. You have it all within, guys, all within. And we're not here to convince you. Go within and you will see that this journey is a pill could never compare.
Yeah.
Could never compare.
And just to touch on, like, not everyone is going to have depression. Not everyone is going to have severe anxiety. I know from working with Ellie that her soul's journey here was to really go into some deep and dark pain. And that's why she experienced it at such a young age. But yours might not be. Your journey here might not be as intense in terms of like the pain that you have to go through. And that's all okay. Everything is perfect just the way that it is. It's just about tapping into, well, what lives within me, what energy is in me, what mental programs am I running, and then how can I heal that to get into love and peace and joy. So everyone's journey is very unique. There's no, in the universe there is no cookie cutter, oh well, this is what you have to do. I think you alluded to that earlier. Everyone's journey, because everyone's programs, everyone's experience is just slightly unique. There's 7 billion people on this earth. We're all having a very, very unique individual experience. So your own healing journey, the best guide you'll ever meet is yourself. Yeah, I mean, you'll find some good guides along the way, but what a real guide, a real teacher will teach you to do is to go back into yourself, back into your own innate wisdom, your own intuition, your own inner guidance. That's the key. That's the key. And that is what we teach at MSU. That is what Rachel Fiori, our CEO, has taught us. And now, as much as I love her, as much as I want to soak up all her wisdom, I don't really need her anymore in that sense, because I just go within myself to find, when I need help, it's me that I now rely on. And she taught me that, and we're all ready to teach you it as well.
And that's the beauty of MSU. That's the beauty of Rachel, is don't rely on me. It's reminding us that we are the power within, that we don't need anything outside of us. And I think that's why you and I are so passionate about this work, and we're so passionate about MSU, is because it's the coming home journey to you, and understanding you don't need anything or anybody outside of you. Once you got you good, boo, and that's what MSU is all about. So for anybody out there, if you want to work with Danny, if you want to work with me, if you want to work with any of our amazing certified coaches, check us out at mastersofselfuniversity.com. Subscribe, share this episode, comment, whatever you want to do. We love you guys so much. And we'll see you guys next week.
Yeah, thank you so much if you've made it this far, for listening. We appreciate it. We'll see you next week.
Bye, everybody. Love y'all.